Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with another Dawson's Top 10 video. A bit of a different topic. Dragon Ball isn't outside of the realm of what I've covered on this channel, but it's more something I cover sporadically. And for those of you that follow these videos, don't worry, there is a bunch more Toku Power Rangers related top videos on the way. There's actually a couple I've already started work on. I just have to, get parts done, and they'll be coming out throughout the year. But I've been in a huge Dragon Ball kick lately, and Super is about to air its final episodes within the next few weeks of when this is filmed. This might come out after that, I'm not sure. It's being recorded before Super's done. But anyway, Dragon Ball kick, wanted to do a Dragon Ball video. Top 10 Dragon Ball characters. If people like this enough, I might do least favorite or some other Dragon Ball related tops, but this is it for that. So, as you know, I always start with honorable mentions. I have like 3, technically 4, which almost makes this a top 15, but there's just some I had to mention. First off is, there's kind of a reason these aren't in the top, like, numbered ones, is Gotenks and Vegeta. I didn't include them in the tops just because they're less of a character in a way, because they're just almost like an event character. They're not a fully formed character where we learn or more anything about them. They're just meant to be, hey, cool fusion. But that's what I liked about them. It was really cool, fanficky, like fan stuff, which is basically what Dragon Ball is, but I really like their personalities. They were both a lot of fun to watch. They were both super cocky, but Vegeto's cockiness and banter and Gotenks' like over-the-top fun with attacks like Super Ghost Kamikaze were just a ton of fun for me to watch. And I also really appreciated the design on how well they incorporated design elements from both characters, especially in their faces. Like, I've always been impressed with Vegeta, how they perfectly captured the personality of Goku and Vegeta's faces. I mean, I know Dragon Ball faces are all very similar, but they both have a distinct like mood and angle to their faces, and they really pulled that off. Another one for honorable mention is Tien. Tien's one that I've actually grown more of an appreciation of, recently. He always has had a cool design to me, but something that I always thought was neat about him was he has a unique fighting style. He always keeps training, unlike a lot of the other non-Goku and Vegeta characters. He's just kind of like the cool loner, and also with his unique fighting style, he's had a lot of techniques that have been super useful, that's so much so that other characters have gone on to use it for years and years. So I always thought that was cool. Another honorable mention, Hercule. Hercule is always a lot of fun to watch. I know a lot of people prefer Mr. Satan, and that makes the funnier joke, but I'm just kind of a Hercule person. But especially in the dub, his voice actor just makes it. He started off as like basically just a funny idea of a character of this like faux world champion. You get reactions of like him seeing the amazing feats of the Dragon Ball characters, but then he just somehow actually became a part of that Z family and like became kind of important. And he's just always like really entertaining and wound up being much more of a character you could actually care about. He started off as a joke and then became someone you could actually like. Anyway, sorry about so many honorable mentions, but I just had to mention those 3. Now on to the actual list. Starting with number 10 is Majin Buu. A bit of a cheat here because this is going to incorporate everything, including Fat Buu all the way to Kid Buu. But I always liked Majin Buu for a number of reasons. He was probably the least complex villain character-wise, because he was just basically, this is evil, it destroys, like at its core. But he had some complexities to him, and he had a really crazy journey of how he transformed. But I always enjoy that about Dragon Ball, about the crazy scenarios and the way it goes. And I liked him from the beginning, where it subverted our expectations of, oh no, this big new villain, and you'd expect something that looks like Super Buu, but then we got Fat Buu, and you're like, oh, what's this? He's pink and fat, but he's also super strong. And he had this sort of fun personality of he just kind of liked to do what he liked to do, and we wound up finding that he could be guided to being good, and then it led to Super Buu, which was a crazy, like he transformed by expelling an evil skinny version of himself, eating it as chocolate, and then becoming essentially more what you would have expected to see as Super Buu. And then we got the fun absorbing. I just always liked Buu's designs, and I thought he was a really fun villain to watch. And there was a bit of, not necessarily huge complexity, but a bit of complexity to how the absorption of like the Kai and stuff affected his personality, to the point where we could have this good Buu off to the side, and then of course reincarnated Oob. He was just like a fun villain. It was just classic Dragon Ball stuff for me. Number 9 is a bit of a weird choice maybe, but it's Goten. I feel like he's one of the characters with least character, but I, for whatever reason, always just liked Goten. When he was little, I just always really liked his enthusiasm of just everything. And I love Goku, so his design being kind of close but different version of it, I always appreciated too. Like, he had Goku's hair, but he's, you know, they designed him so he still stands out on his own. But I just always enjoyed his like raw enthusiasm for just using his powers. And then it extends a bit to GT as well. I really liked his personality. We didn't get to see him a lot, but and it extended from an idea at the end of Z's epilogue, but that he was kind of was like into girls and like kind of like a ladies' man, and he was kind of showing off to Paris and stuff like that. And I would have loved a character later on where he actually kind of dug fighting, but also was into sort of earthly stuff, you know, like getting girls and like more normal human stuff, but like liked to fight in a different way than Goku, where he just kind of had pure fun with the power aspect. But whether it was his child enthusiasm or like his sort of, you know, ladies' man ways in GT, I always just thought he had a fun personality. And I also really liked his character design in GT. I don't know, like it was neat. Like, it's like because their hair grows like humans, it makes sense that it would kind of still be Goku shaped but different. I don't know, it's just kind of weird. Number 8, Goku Black, or Zamasu, but mainly Goku Black. The reason he didn't go higher on my list is because even though I think there's some really interesting stuff behind Zamasu's character that I like, it also just is that generic, oh, humans are a plague, we have to destroy them. That's like so overdone. So that's like the only reason he's overall lower on my rankings, but Goku Black was just really cool. Again, I really like Goku and I like Goku's design, so seeing an actual evil version, I mean, technically it wasn't the first time we saw something like that at all, because we had Captain Ginyu and we had Turles and stuff like that, but those were different. But this was like really cool. I loved his outfit. And mainly, I loved the mystery around him. Like, Dragon Ball has always been a show, especially in Super, that I could watch pretty easily and be like, oh, I want to see the next episode. But this was the first time I was intrigued. Like, what's going on here? You know, like, who could this be? And then, you know, oh, it's probably Zamasu once we got on that. But then Zamasu appeared next to him. Of course, he did end up being Zamasu, but that was still cool, because it was kind of like, oh, the answer's kind of obvious now that they're laying it out for us. But then that moment when Zamasu dropped down next to Goku Black, and for a moment it shattered your theories, you know. And I ended up liking the timey-wimey aspect of him, and the aspect I like of Goku Black specifically is like his conflict between his original motivations and starting to take on Saiyan characteristics of actually wanting to fight. But he was just really cool. But the main things I liked about him was the mystery surrounding him, and the whole, like, timey-wimey aspect to his exact origins. Okay, number 7, Android 17 and 18. This is a bit of a cheat because it's 2 and 1, but specifically 17 and 18 from Trunks' timeline. Now, don't get me wrong. I really like 17 and 18 in the present timeline. It obviously makes it a bit more interesting to give them more character other than just Android Crush. Especially, you know, as in Super, we got a little more focus on both of them. So that's all objectively better stuff, but I just really liked 17 and 18 in the past because of how brutal they were. Not because I'm like, evil stuff. It was just like, I thought they were such unique villains. And even though I liked Cell, I feel like the androids were robbed of being main antagonists. Just, even, like I said, I liked Cell and I liked some of the timey-wimey stuff that came from that. But what I always thought was so cool about the androids is in a series filled with usual monstrous-looking villains that transform into more monstrous forms, both before and after the androids, it was neat to have these villains that just like looked like normal people, and yet at the time were more powerful than anything we had faced. Like, at the timeline in the show, both in the show and for the characters, we just come off Frieza, like this classic Dragon Ball villain of monstrous alien that transforms and gets stronger, and that was like the height of strength at the time. And then all of a sudden you have these people that look like average humans that are just demolishing everyone and are way stronger than Frieza. And I thought that was a nice contrast. And it's not like their designs were boring either. I always thought they had really sleek, cool-looking designs. Especially, I always liked 17 a little bit more. But I just thought they were really cool. And the way that they had this imposing threat in the past. And they also just were kind of aimless. Like, they just kind of enjoyed doing stuff. You know, like, oh, I'm just going to shop here and then blow it up. And it was terrifying that there was no real, like, goal. They were just kind of existing to amuse themselves, but yet they were the most powerful villains they had ever faced, and they were just so different, and I feel they were robbed of being a more unique antagonist. Number 6 is Beerus. Beerus was actually a character that I was kind of iffy on when he first showed up, but I've really grown to appreciate him. Like, his design, at first I was like, this is the villain of this Dragon Ball returning movie, but then I've really grown to appreciate, like, its influence of, like, Egyptian stuff, and it's kind of awesome to have this badass cat thing, and I really liked the concept over time of the God of Destruction, of having this larger, powerful threat, I guess, because he's kind of unique too, because he wasn't a straight up villain. He's just like a god that sees things from a different perspective because he's immortal and so powerful. So he was a different kind of threat, where he wasn't actively evil trying to search something out. He was just kind of going about his business, and that led to kind of a fun personality of this contrast between that and then like his love for food. And you like get comfortable with him, like, oh, just I want ramen, and lol, I'm kind of funny. And then he does something like destroys Zamasu, and you kind of remember, oh yeah, this dude's super powerful. So I just really enjoy his personality, that he can switch between being badass and kind of weirdly quirky, which is just classic Dragon Ball. And I also liked that we had a villain or a adversary that Goku couldn't quite reach yet, because that's one thing I did think Super did well, is that by the end of Z, you felt everyone was so powerful that what can you keep doing? But then they were like, okay, there's this whole other tier up here. And even by the time Goku first fought Beerus, there was still a tier to reach. I mean, he probably surpassed it now, but at the time I really liked that. Okay, number 5 is Vegeta. I know Vegeta is a lot of people's favorite or top 5, or like super higher on the top 5. And he still is a favorite of mine. I think he's a great character, but there's a reason there's other higher on my list. But I mean, most of the reasons I'm going to say why Vegeta's on this list is why other people like him. I mean, he's badass, he has a great redemption arc, so there's just retreading over ground that people, you know, already like about him, and that's what I like about him, what everyone else likes about him. He's a badass, he had a good redemption arc, but there's another character I think has a little bit more of an interesting redemption arc that I will get to in a second. Number 4 is Gohan. Gohan's another popular character that has disappointed a lot of people in the way he's been handled, and Gohan's a character that took me a while to warm up to and appreciate too, because I, like a lot of people, wanted to see a successor for Goku that liked to fight, and I think they could have maybe done that with Goten. I don't see the reason why they couldn't have a character that likes to fight but also likes human stuff, but that's for another video. But I like that Gohan was different from Goku in the fact that his desire to fight came out of his desire to help people, and not so much out of wanting to fight. I mean, I don't think he entirely loathes it. He doesn't really, he says like in Cell he doesn't like it, but there's been moments through the series where he's kind of enjoyed fighting. Like I remember rock, paper, scissors for fighting the people on Babidi's ship and stuff. So it's kind of like something like a food. Like, oh, if I'll eat it, I kind of like it, but if I never eat this food again, it's fine. That's the way he kind of sees fighting, I see, and he, as a recreation thing. But it's more so, you know, he fights to protect people, and I thought that was an interesting take on it, that he has more of a sense of justice, a more reasonable sense of justice, because his love for fighting doesn't get in the way of it, and the fact that he has this huge dormant power, but only uses it to protect people and doesn't harness it for training can be frustrating, but I think it makes things just a little more interesting and less predictable than Goku 2.0. And I also really like that his sense for justice comes out in funny ways, like Great Saiyaman has always been really entertaining to me. And I really like that he has gotten more focus in Super. I wish he could still be up there in the main fighters like Goku and Vegeta, because I think they could do it by having a fun story of him trying to balance his goals as a human, but needing to be stronger to protect people. And I'd love to see him be more front and center, but at least they've given him more attention. But I think he's an interesting and different character. Number 3 is Piccolo. Now this is the character I was talking about, where I think his redemption arc's a little bit more interesting for me personally than Vegeta. Because Vegeta, as good as his story can be and enjoyable it is to watch, it's just kind of classic stuff in a lot of ways. Not that this can't be intricate, but for Piccolo I always found it more interesting, because he's basically the evil half of a person that was split off, who found redemption before reuniting with his good half, and the, you know, thing that kicked that off was essentially helping to raise and train what at the time was his worst enemy's son. And I thought that was always interesting. It made him an interesting character, and his journey to being one of the good guys, something you could see more clearly, I always felt. And he was always this really badass character too, on top of that. And his dynamic with Gohan is one of my favorites in all of the series. And I like that after, you know, all of his development, and especially after merging with Kami, he also became kind of wise. So he was kind of both badass and wise. And I like that even though he can't keep up with the levels Goku and Vegeta are reaching, he always does keep his training up and tries to be useful, and I'm really glad that Super has given him more moments to shine like that. Number 2, Future Trunks. Future Trunks is just an awesome character. There's so much I've always liked about him. From the design of his character, you know, to finding out this mysterious Super Saiyan and he had different hair than we're used to. Like, not the Super Saiyan hair, but like usually, you know, Saiyan black hair. It's like purple hair. You find out he's Vegeta and Bulma's son. His whole backstory is just like amazing and tragic, and he's just such a badass character, and I'm a sucker for future storylines, and he just got so much complexities with not only what he had to deal with back in the androids, but then having to deal with the Goku Black stuff. And he represents so much of what I liked about that era, and so much what I like about Dragon Ball. He's such a good character, and I kind of wish he would have just stuck around after his timeline got erased. But it makes sense if they ever want to do older Trunks. But he's just such a cool character with such a cool storyline. And sometimes he even breaches into being my number 1. But my number 1 is a really basic answer, really generic in a lot of ways, but it's my favorite, and that's Goku. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense because he represents a lot of character types I usually don't like, which is like a character type that Japan seems to like, both in anime and toku and whatever, which is like a loudmouth idiot. And I find that funny that that's like their favorite go-to hero type. Like in the US, it's usually like just a generic like Dudley Do-Right Knight generic hero. In Japan, it's like a loudmouth crackhead that does really stupid stuff. And that's kind of what Goku can be. I think he's a little bit different than some of them, but it goes against, you know, what I usually like. But I think a lot of that has to do with Sean's voice acting. I've actually gotten used to the Japanese voice. I used to hate it because it was like, I'm so used to Goku sounding more heroic, and then he sounds like a shrieking, like, alien monkey, which I guess he is. But it's like, it was like, is that a chipmunk? Like, what is that? But I've actually gotten used to it and appreciated it, which I think is a testament to why I like Goku as a character, because transitioning from dub to subs, my love for the character stayed. But I think I do prefer Sean's just a little bit, because he does a great job of making Goku sound like he has an adult male voice, but he's got the spirit of a kid in him. And when he's heroic, it sounds heroic, like more heroic for me. And I think that really just embodies all the differences in Goku's character by the time he got older. I feel like he's gotten dumber in Super. Maybe it's because of the voice acting, but I feel like they made him more reckless and stupid in Super. Like he always has been. But I feel like they regressed him a bit. Because he did some stupid stuff in the Buu era, but I feel like there was some signs of a bit of maturity. But that's, for another video. But Goku contradicts a lot of what I usually don't like, but Goku's just always been a joy to watch for me. There's just something about him that always puts a smile on my face, his enthusiasm for it, his heroic spirit when he shows it, his badassery when it happens, like especially the dub version of when he becomes Super Saiyan 3. He's just always been a joy to watch. And as far as like character motivations, I always did find it fascinating, like the way he's driven by a desire to fight like all Saiyans, but it doesn't come from as not cruel, isn't the right word, but as aggressive as a place as the normal Saiyans of his race in Universe 7 because of the bump on his head. So as a result, he is a kinder, gentler person, but he still has this desire to fight. But I always thought it was interesting the way it manifests in much more of a fun, competitive way, and it'll still get him in trouble, but just in different ways. And I always thought that was interesting, and he's just always been a character I love. It's like, in part, I can explain it, but you know, on the other hand, sometimes I just can't explain it. Sometimes you just like something or love something and you can't really explain it, but it's not a crime to love something you can't explain. But anyway, that is about it for my top 10. As usual, let me know what yours is. If you enjoyed this, let me know, and I'll maybe do some more Dragon Ball top or related videos down the line. But I really just wanted to do this because my Dragon Ball kick, so thank you for letting me do that. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It's Dawson Ryder, signing out.